Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're going to be taking a look at the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class Arcee, inspired by the Transformers 1986 the movie. And overall this is actually a pretty decent attempt to recreate what is undeniably one of the most difficult character designs to ever grace the Transformers universe. As far as an action figure is concerned, I think they've done a pretty decent job in concealing that backpack. Now surprisingly, this is actually a retool of the Thrilling 30s Arcee that was originally released way back in 2014 and not the most recent Earthrise that I believe we saw in 2020. Personally, I think that was absolutely the right way to go about things. That Earthrise, at least for me, left a lot to be desired, and I was not a big fan of her backpack, nor the fact that you could detach it and turn it into a surfboard, and I actually thought it was a downgrade when in comparison to the figure that had come out 6 years prior. So here we have the new Studio Series version, and overall actually looking pretty awesome. The biggest selling point, at least for me, has got to be the articulation. She poses so well. Now, as we take a closer look here at the details, you can see, as far as that head is concerned, what a marked improvement just in itself when in comparison to what we saw for Earthrise. Here, for a very quick comparison, you can see that this just completely lacked any personality. It was pretty much devoid of all life. It had a pretty decent looking sculpt, but as far as the paint was concerned, it was barren. Whereas here, with this new version, you can see that we have pink for the faceplate, red for the lips, as well as those massive blue eyes, and the sculpt work is actually a little better on this version when in comparison to this, at least in my opinion. And whilst we're here, we may as well check out that massive backpack. Now granted, whilst this version still has a pretty sizable backpack, I really don't think it's nowhere near as bad as what we saw here for Earthrise, especially as we turn here to a back perspective. This just looks atrocious and really doesn't resemble what we saw from the animation at all. And granted, you could actually completely remove this entire section, which to me just wasn't a Transformer. This was a shell former. Now we'll set this here off to the side for now and take another look here at the details. The chest piece, I believe, is a complete reuse from what we saw from Thrilling 30, so let's bring that one in here for a comparison. Yep, that's definitely appearing to be exactly the same, as so are the shoulders and biceps, but they looked great on this figure, so why change them here for this one? I think they look equally as good. However, the entire forearm is a complete brand new sculpt. Even as we take a look here at the back, you can see very nicely painted, and the hands are just so much nicer. You can see all of those individual segments which are supposed to replicate kind of the finger articulation that she would have, and as we just compare it here to that Thrilling 30s version, once again, these just look so much better and don't actually prevent the blaster from sliding all the way into the hand, unlike this release. Now, the blaster is also a complete carryover from the Thrilling 30s, albeit this time has been cast out of a much more animation-accurate gunmetal grey, which I think looks great. And as we take a look here at the midsection, this too is also completely brand new. You can see some nice grey paint apps just to pick out some of the sharper details of the sculpt. The pelvis is new, and the legs also are completely brand new, allowing for so much more posability. So they can in fact actually kick forwards that far as well as out to the sides, and she actually has some proper ankle rocker pivot, but we'll be sure to touch base with that in just a second. As we take a look down here to the lower section, I think the sculpt work for the most part looks great, and the color palette I think is on point. The pearly white plastic mixed with this really nice bubblegum pink overall has come out really well done. Now, if I were to be critical, the only piece of engineering that I wish they'd borrowed from the Kingdom/Earthrise version would be how you can collapse the wheels into the backpack. Had they been able to do that with this version, I think overall it would have made her pretty much complete. And as far as the design of the thighs are concerned, despite them being a lot cleaner when in comparison to Thrilling 30, I do just think in terms of female anatomy, these ones look slightly more accurate. They are slightly more curvy when in comparison to these ones, but nevertheless this is still a pretty decent sculpt, and of course no longer has the rear wheel like the original Thrilling 30s release had. So let's quickly delve into articulation. The head can look up to an amazing range. You can see that is so nicely done. It can also look down, tilt side to side, as well as rotate left to right. We do get ball joints here at the shoulders, which can rotate pretty much any way that you want. A rotation at the bicep, way past 90, only at a single bend here at the elbow. Surprisingly, due to transformation, we actually do get an ab crunch, which I think is a really nice touch. Very similar to the likes of the SS86 Wreck-Gar and Junk Heap. She also does have a waist joint, which can rotate the full 360. The legs can kick forwards that far, back that far, out to the sides. Rotation here at at the thigh, bend way past 90 here at the knee, and the foot, in addition to the pivot which can go forwards and backwards, can rock side to side to an amazing extent, making pretty much any pose that you want to get her in completely accomplishable, which I thought was really nicely done. Now, as we delve into a slightly more detailed comparison, here we have Arcee compared alongside all of her most recent generation's counterparts. So we've got the Eartherized version here on the right, and the original Thrilling 30s mold here on the left. And as you can see, she is definitely an amalgamation of new pieces as well as borrowed components from this 2014 version. She doesn't bear any resemblance at all to this Eartherized. They literally have completely scrapped that and disregarded it. But just to showcase how she looks here from a side perspective, once again, I really do think the Studio Series version blows this Eartherized one out of the water. And as we take a closer, more detailed look at these two, I think that originally they nailed the robot mode on this version, but what they've tried to do here with this new Studio Series release is really make that vehicle mode as animation accurate as possible, which is why she now has a slightly bigger backpack where that butt kibble is concerned. Is it a worthy sacrifice? Well, we'll be sure to touch base with that in vehicle mode, but overall, I really don't think the kibble is that bad at all. I do think for the most part, it is at this point kind of a character trait of Arcee, and is definitely not the worst that I've ever seen. But just to give you guys kind of a look at how these are shaping up, overall, at least personally for me, whilst I love kind of the head sculpt that we got here, especially with that light piping, I do think in terms of animation accuracy, this one definitely does take the cake. And had they tried to maybe take this section, this midsection, and apply it to this release, perhaps that would have looked slightly better. This one's slightly more blockish, whereas this one is slightly more curvy, but this doesn't have a waist joint, whereas this release here does. So at the end of the day, I imagine it's going to come up to personal preference. Articulation wise, the new Studio Series version is the vastly superior one. You've got ankle rocker pivot, you've got waist rotation, you've also got that ab crunch. Sadly, no form of wrist rotation, but that's merely just due to the nature of the design. Now, as we take a look here at some comparisons, here we have the SS86 Arcee compared alongside the Eartherized Leader Optimus Prime, the Siege Voyager class Springer, 86 Deluxe class Perceptor, Studio Series Voyager class Hot Rod, and here for one final comparison, we have the Masterpiece Arcee. Now, I've truly just brought her out to showcase that even with a significant height and price increase, you're still never going to be able to get rid of that backpack due to just the nature of the design. A design of which I think is probably one of the best for Arcee in recent years would be the Bumblebee movie Arcee design. It is so well done. She doesn't have a ridiculous backpack, still stays very truthful to how she appeared in G1. So unless they are to go forward and maybe actually change the original G1 design of Arcee, this is how we are forever going to see the character. There is just nowhere to put that vehicle mode kibble other than on her back without majorly compromising the design of her robot mode. So I really do think they did a pretty fantastic job. Even as we take a look here at a side perspective, the kibble is still the same on this version, it's just placed in a slightly different position. It is the exact same as this, it's just been able to be squished up ever so slightly higher. Definitely be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think. Do you think there is a way for Hasbro to completely abolish the back kibble for Arcee without it actually becoming detached? Personally, I don't really think so. Now, when it comes to the transformation for this Studio Series 86 Arcee, despite her sharing very similar engineering to that of the Thrilling 30s release, due to the brand new backpack, which will hopefully significantly improve her vehicle mode, I will be honest and say it does make the transformation ever so slightly more frustrating than personally I would like. But to begin with, you're going to want to take the neck and pull this section forwards. That will then allow us to detach this chest piece and shoot this entire back piece up so that we can then take the head, fold this around, and snap that there into place, basically forming the front half of the vehicle mode. What we can then do is come to the waist, and you're going to want to detach this entire joint, rotate so that the front is now facing the back, and then as far as this section is concerned, you'll want to hinge this out, fold out these panels to the sides, and then this brand new section also will flip up. Now, I personally would recommend just to hinge the shoulders out of the way to allow for some clearance, as you're now going to want to take this entire piece and swivel this around until it actually clicks into place like this. Now, as far as the hands are concerned, these are actually going to shoot into some hollow cavities which are situated just behind the front headlights, so just groove those in there. Try not to catch the thumb on any of the hinge joints, and do the same here for this side. Now, due to the nature of the design, the shoulders will already have a slight cutout that basically this tab will peg into, so just try your best to align this up, snap that there into place, and repeat the same process here for this side. And as far as this is concerned, basically here on the underside we have a tiny groove that will essentially just slide into this notch. Sadly, it doesn't tab into place, and I do kind of wish that it would, but it does just sit there. We can then point the toes forwards, rotate here at the thigh so that we've created something which looks along the lines of this. And now these tabs, which are created out of the heel spurs, will peg into this slot. So hinge this up and over and snap this section here into place, and repeat the same process here for this side. So just take both of them, shoot them into that hollow cavity, making sure that everything does stay tabbed in, and with a bit of luck she should just about clear on the ground. So there is the Studio Series 86 Arcee fully transformed up into her Cybertronian vehicle mode. Now, the transformation definitely isn't on the complex side at all. To be honest, it's pretty straightforward, but I will say that the underside, especially where these legs are concerned, can take quite a bit of getting used to, as you really have to get them in the correct orientation before she will be able to roll along the ground. There is such a slight amount of clearance, meaning that even if these are not fully pushed in, she literally will just scrape. Now, as far as the detail of the vehicle mode is concerned, I think this is fantastic. The color of bubblegum pink they've used is almost spot on. You can see we've got the Autobot logo there at the front, some very nice white paint apps for the headlight. We've even got the seats, as well as some nice dashboard detailing, that pink fin, and some of the brand new areas are in fact these kind of side doors. These were absent on the Thrilling 30s, meaning that it was basically just her thighs, and to be honest, I do think this looks a lot better overall. At least in my opinion, I think this could just be the superior mold. Now, as far as some size comparisons are concerned, here we have the Studio Series Arcee compared alongside once more the Thrilling 30s and the Earthrise version. Now, we'll touch base here with the Earthrise just as it is the most recent out of the two. If I'm going to be honest, as far as details are concerned, I really do think this pales in comparison to our new version. The SS just looks so much more sleeker and sharper when in comparison to this rather chunky, disproportionate looking vehicle, and to be honest, it kind of looks rather cheap now being compared alongside this. And as we just flip here to the underside, the transformations are literally like night and day, at least to me. There was barely any thought put into this at all, and granted, whilst this still is for the most part a shell former, at least the actual torso transformed and there was something a little more interesting going on than us basically just crumpling the legs on the underside and folding the arms up like this. This really wasn't the best in my opinion. I will say, however, I do kind of find myself preferring the pink that they used on the Earthrise over the Studio Series version. I imagine this is slightly more animation accurate, but this one definitely does pop. Now, as we set this here off to the side and bring in that Thrilling 30s release, you can see, of course, considering for the most part they are basically the same, there's obvious similarities, but as we just turn here to a side perspective, you'll notice that the Studio Series version, due to the modified backpack, now has basically the side doors and this entire rear piece filled out. Now, if you're not a big fan of the added articulation and the vehicle mode was never really something that bothered you, as let's be honest, this actually looked pretty decent, then I don't think this Studio Series version is going to be worth the upgrade, as for the most part this still was pretty good. But if you want a complete accurate version of Arcee, the best version that you can buy, I do think that this is it in both modes. I really do think this is pretty top notch, and just to take a closer look, you can see that lovely transparent blue for the windscreen. So definitely be sure to let me know down in the comment section below what you guys think out of all three. I think all of them have their pros and cons, besides this Earthrise, as it is definitely a lot more cons than barely any positives, but it is just kind of a toss-up between the original 2014 and now, of course, our new 2022 version. And so, some final thoughts for the Transformers Studio Series Deluxe Class 86 movie Arcee. Overall, I think it's a very nice attempt of once again recreating one of the most difficult character designs into an action figure. As far as the robot mode is concerned, I think it was great that they actually went back to that Thrilling 30s mold. That was always one of the best Arcees in my opinion, and at least to me, I definitely think they've improved upon it. Granted, she does have additional kibble in the robot mode, but it isn't as bad as the Earthrise, and I still don't think it's too dissimilar to what we originally saw in 2014, and at least in my opinion, really does make that alt mode pop and just kind of completes it and fills it out to better match what we saw on screen. The biggest selling point for me is the articulation. She poses so nicely, and with the addition of their ab crunch really does allow you to put her into some poses which can actually rival the masterpiece. Besides the absence of butterfly joints, I really do think this is pretty on par with that significantly more expensive version, and at least to me, if you're after an affordable G1 representation of the character, then I think this is the one to pick up, as that Thrilling 30s release does actually go for quite a hefty price tag on the aftermarket. I'd love to hear your opinions down in the comment section below. Do you find this to be a worthy upgrade over that Thrilling 30s release, or if you own the original, will you be going out to buy this? And what do you guys think in terms of a comparison between this release and what we saw for Earthrise? As always, I thank you guys all so much for watching, and until my next review, I'll see you then. Thanks for watching.